We're now ready to actually move on to the setup within Scribe for creating your cost centers and cost codes. So using the setup menu on the left-hand side, I'm going to go to cost centers first. So Scribe works on a two-tier system. We have both cost centers, which are your main headings or services, and then cost codes, which is the analysis or budget elements that sit beneath those cost centers. You'll usually have an idea of your budget before you come in. So Scribe's real word for sort of budget is effectively going to be your cost codes. We have to group those cost codes together or allocate them to a nominated cost center, which is why we create them first. And we use those as cost centers. So there is some narrative here that says the highest level of division, for instance, administration or a community center. So to generate a new one, again, you can either click onto the plus button next to the title name of cost centers or the more traditional version of using edit and adding a new record. Simply type in the name of the cost center and you can add it or you can add and repeat to generate another one. There is a box here for confidential. You can tick this box if you're creating a staff cost center and you don't want any of the individual information relating to those cost codes to be displayed on your reports. Scribe will automatically give it the next sequential cost center ID number. You cannot manually change that number. You can see I've got various ones that I've set up here for income, administration, allotments, a town hall, etc. We have got, using those quick start guides that you saw at the beginning, we have got an example of a costs code setup for you to be able to have a look at. It might be just as straightforward as having one cost center for income, where you'll have your cost codes such as precept, bank interest, grants and donations, and VAT attached to it. And then you may just have one expenditure cost center, such as expenditure, for which everything else can be attached to. You'll have, depending on how big your council is, you might have sort of anything from sort of 2 to possibly 10 other cost centers. The more you have will obviously depend on the size of the council. As you're adding these in, you will notice later that when you run your reports, you can run them either in alphabetical order, in which case I would have admin first, then allotments. But the reports do actually run in alphanumeric order. So with the example I've got here of 01 youth, actually, if I was to run the report in alphabetical order or alphanumeric, it would give me 01 youth first and then admin and allotments. So you can actually start to customize how you view the report. Alternatively, the reports will run in cost center ID number. So that's the ID or the order number that you can see on the left-hand side. Therefore, if like myself, you'd like to see income at the top of your reports, please make sure when you're setting up your system and you're first creating your cost centers, that the first one that you create is income. And then that will make sure that when you run that report in cost code ID order number, income will be the first one that you see at the top of the report. So we then move on to our cost codes. Here is where we can have a list of the cost codes that we already have access to on the system or to create the new ones. I've actually got a filter applied here at the moment, which is why mine's displaying blank. So I'm just going to head to the actions button in the top right-hand corner and clear my list settings to bring my cost codes back for me. So again, to create a new one, top right-hand corner and add a new record. When you add your record in, that cost code number is going to be system generated. If you're particularly large and you have used specific cost code numbers before, then you need to be able to have those the same. You can overtype this number for cost codes. You can't do it for cost centers, but you can do it for cost codes. Other than that, if it's not something that you've used before, I would recommend that you just let the system simply take the next available number for you. Type in the name of your cost code. So if this one here is going to be for my office expenses, I can type in here my office expenses or my stationery. Choose the cost center that it's then applicable to. So that's why we created those first. So my office expenses here would come underneath my cost center for admin. Reserves and balance brought forward with reserves we cover in the section on reserves. So I'm not going to cover that today, but just so that you know that it is there for a future training session. Type, however, is important. So the type is what Scribe uses to complete your AGAR. So for my office expenses, that's going to be a standard box 6 expense. So the type is going to be default. If this is a standard box 6 or box 3 cost code, depending on whether it's income or expenditure, then default will tell it to populate box 3 or box 6 of the AGAR. However, when you are creating your precept cost code, even though you'll have attached that to the income cost center, you must allocate a type of precept for your precept so that Scribe knows that that will filter through to box 2 of your AGAR. Similarly, when you're entering in your staff costs, so your PAYE, national insurance contributions, pensions contributions, etc., those core staff costs, you will need to select a type of staff, which will filter through to box 4 on your AGAR. Obviously, using that practitioner's guide, if we need further explanation, it is core staff costs only. So whilst you may have a cost centre of staff, if you're using a cost code for training expenses, working from home allowances, staff training, staff costs, etc., then you would not allocate a type of staff. That would actually be default because they're not box 4 items. So do please make sure that you do allocate the correct type. Anything that needs to go to box 4 must be allocated that type of staff. And then similarly for your PWLB loans, etc., you will use a type of capital repayment so that it filters through to box 5. Forecasting, again, similar to the reserves that we've got above, is covered in another training session on Scribe. It's important, though, to type in your budgets. So if this is a payment budget for, I think I looked originally at office expenses, then I would actually type the budget in below. If, of course, it was an income cost code, such as my precept, and I had a receipt budget, then I could type in the receipt on the right-hand side. You may have some cost codes that have both a payment and a receipt budget, and if that's the case, you can simply pop one in on both sides. We can see how Scribe actually spreads this monthly by viewing the payment flexed budget. So if I actually click onto that drop-down box, we can see that it's taken 1/12 of the £200 and apportioned it directly for all of the months below. £200 doesn't divide quite nicely in between 12 months. So it's actually popped the £16.63 into April and then £16.67 into all of the other months because our control total is £200. If we don't want the system to spread monthly, we can actually choose spread quarterly. Then we're going to see some nice round figures of £50 coming into April, £50 into July, October, and so forth. You'll notice there is an additional box that's opened up now below spread quarterly that says month 1, and that's suggesting that the £50 is going to be coming out in April. We can change that to month 2 or month 3, and we can see if I change it to month 2, it's taken it out of April and popped it into May. So again, using those budgeting reports, if I was to run a report for up until the end of April, the system would define here that it doesn't expect you to have spent any money up until the end of April because you're not budgeted to do so. Whereas if you were to run the report to the end of May, it would have expected £50 to have been spent. So it's just flexing your budget and seeing how you want it to appear on those reports. The final option that you have, though, is spread manually. And for this one, you then tell Scribe where to put that £200. So it might be that this is a subscriptions cost code or an insurance cost code, and all of that £200 comes out in September. You can then just pop that full amount into September. Do obviously make sure, however, that if this is, possibly grass cutting or something where you've got different values in the summer and autumn and less in the winter time, that you still make sure that those individual items that you pop into the 12 months do match that control total of £200 to the penny, because if not, it won't save it because it'll say that it's not actually matched properly. So again, you can use add or add and repeat to populate that into your list of cost codes. Carrying on, adding all of your cost codes in. Once you've finished, we recommend that you run a copy of your summary report. So on the left-hand side of the screen now, I'm going to come to the summary report menu and choose the first one, that is the summary report. This will then produce a list of all of your cost centres and cost codes beneath them with the budgets that you've set. You'll carry on using this report on a monthly basis to show budget against actual, but for the setup part of the system, we're just interested in the budget at the moment. As I mentioned previously, you can run the report on either alphanumeric or in cost code ID number. So to do that, we're going to head to the filter option in the top right-hand corner, and where I've got here order by cost centre, rather than choosing to order by cost centre name, i.e. alphanumerically, I'm going to choose to run it by cost centre ID. When I then view the report, we can now see that I've got my income at the top of the report. So that's my cost centre. I can see my budgets that have come here together, all of my individual cost codes for income, my preset, my donations, bank interest, and VAT refunds, etc. And I've got that total budget being displayed here underneath that. And then looking at the expenditure cost codes underneath my administration, I've got, again, all of the budgets that are sitting there. So it's quite useful at this stage to actually review your summary report, to look through your cost codes and make sure that you've popped them in the right place. So as I come down to my allotments, I noticed that, for example, my allotment hire, I've included in my income cost centre, but actually I would prefer to see it underneath my allotments cost centre. So it's very easy to change things at this stage if you want to amend them. So my cost code here for allotment hire, cost code number 4, we set it up originally in the setup menu and under cost codes. So I'm going to use the quick search facility here to search for my allotment hire. So I'm just going to type the word allotment into the quick search, hit return, and I can see all of the ones that are linked to allotments now display. So number 4 was the one that I wanted to change. It's currently linked to a cost centre of income, and I want to change it to become allotments. I can use the 3 vertical dots on the right-hand side and edit my cost code. And coming back here where I chose that cost centre of income, I can now switch it to be related to allotments. Saving that update makes the change automatically. So if I now go back and rerun my summary report, I can see that from within income, my allotment hire has disappeared. And if I scroll down to my allotments cost centre, it's come here. Scrolling down to the very bottom of the report, we get to see the full summary. So we can see the complete total for the budgeted income and the budgeted expenditure for the year. Additionally, at this stage, you might want to use the filter and actually take out the subtotals. So taking out the subtotals means you lose that cost centres, and it just gives you a complete list of all of your cost codes. So here we can see just the individual cost codes. For mine, they will fit onto one page, which is quite nice. And again, at the bottom, you've got that total for the budgeted income and the budgeted expenditure for the year. So it is quite useful to actually take a look at this report, make sure that you're happy with it. Do you need to possibly streamline anything, or are you happy with the budget how it is? Maybe you need to expand things a little bit more. Maybe, as I said, you need to streamline them through. If you have any queries or questions on that, you can also send it through to hello@scribeaccounts.com, and we'll be quite happy to overview that for you.